effective crime prevention, detection, prosecution, and rehabilitation. In furtherance of our national security agenda, Madam President, this government has reinstituted the urban renewal program, the school-based policing program, the tourism-based policing program, and of course, as our Honorable Attorney General has so articulated, our Swift Justice Initiative. Madam President, we would have all taken note that she would have very clearly and in a very concise way identified the components, the initiatives, the strategies that her office is entrusted with, and the significant strides that they are making. And I would wish on behalf of this government commend her for the fine work that she is continuing to do on her fine staff. You know, Madam President, the Honorable Attorney General, my Honorable Senator, she indicated that it was important for her to continue to develop legislation, progressive legislation, as it relates to the use of CCTV, etc. You know, Madam President, and also the anklet bracelet or the electronic monitoring, where if an individual is in a particular place, then by all means, there should be no reason why we should not be able to use that in terms of admissibility in evidence. Madam President, just last week, on the subject of the electronic monitoring, for instance, an individual who was on bail for one murder, he committed another murder about 3 weeks ago, and the police arrested him last week. And what was interesting about that case was 2 points. First of all, they found the murder weapon on him. And secondly, he was being electronically monitored. And we were able to put him back on the last scene. And so that is the case, Madam President, that will be referred to the Attorney General for swift justice. We need to get him off the streets very quickly. Madam President, as outlined in our Charter for Governance, we committed to launch a number of significant initiatives once in office, and we have made good on these initiatives. Urban Renewal 2.0 was launched, and this initiative is transforming the lives of thousands of people throughout the Bahamas. Urban renewal teams are led by inspectors of police under the guidance of 2 superintendents, and they set about to implement the force's strategic priorities for policing this country. Madam President, the outstanding work of officers and civilians assigned in urban renewal cannot be questioned. They are embracing the community. They are restoring confidence and trust. When the people trust their police, they confide in their police, and this leaves criminals no hiding place among us. There are countless examples, Madam President, countless examples of the fine work that is being done by the urban renewal teams, the police force, the defense force, customs, immigration, all of our departments. But Madam President, I would only wish to implore the media to seek to strike a balance in what they seek to report. Strike a balance. You will not find, Madam President, nowhere in any story. Just recently we had a homicide week before last. It was the community's efforts that led the police to an abandoned building where they arrested the 2 young men and retrieved the murder weapon. Madam President, you will not find in any newspaper, even though they are aware of it, 3 young boys, ages 6, 7, and 9 years old. They were walking to school one morning, a few weeks ago, before school closed. A few months ago, as a matter of fact. They were walking to school, and they found a firearm. Imagine that, in the hands of a 6-year-old, and 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. They, instead of going to school, they walked to the police station. And when they got to the police station, they told the officer, "We have something." So the officer asked, "Well, what do you have?" They said, "We have a gun." So the officer, he wasn't sure that, they really had this a real weapon. But when the officer took it, a real weapon, loaded with rounds, and they were able to take it there without incident. You know, I promised that I would go to that school at some point and congratulate those young boys and commend them for their effort, for what they did. But these things you will not know about. I can tell you of a number of incidents where the elderly have called the police and said that they saw someone hiding something in their yard. When the police go and search, they either find a gun or they find drugs. I can tell you of cases where the police has conducted a secondary search and found weapons on some of our young men. So you see, Madam President, the work of the officers, the work of urban renewal, and more importantly, the communication, the collaboration between the police and the community is being enhanced through urban renewal. Madam President, in shifting slightly as it relates to crime, I wish to focus for a brief moment on the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. The Defense Force continues to fulfill its mandate of protecting the sovereignty of the Bahamas. Budgetary requirements for the Royal Bahamas Police Force for 2013-2014 have been made available for an increase in manpower complement, base development projects, patrol vessels, dry docking, and refit and increased training for its personnel. Madam President, as we would have announced in our midterm budget, this government has undertaken to increase the fleet of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, to increase the human resources of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, whereby it would be the single largest investment in the history of that organization. In excess of $200 million is being spent to ensure that the Royal Bahamas Police Force is given the tools that it needs to protect our sovereignty. And Madam President, you know, theirs is a thankless job too. I can recall, Madam President, that over the last year or so, they have intercepted a number of vessels with illegal migrants. As a matter of fact, very recently, they intercepted a number of vessels, one with 128 persons, one with 60, the next one with 40. As a matter of fact, Madam President, one of those vessels had drugs and firearm on board. But these are the types of cases, Madam President, that you don't hear about. I can tell you of a number of instances where they would go into our harbor. They would find weapons on board, on pleasure crafts. They conduct thousands, literally thousands of searches. And they protect our port along with the port security. Madam President, as it relates to the acquisition of these vessels, some 9 vessels, we are underway with a letter of intent, which will subsequently lead to a contract for the acquisition of these vessels. Of course, Madam President, it would call for an increase in the human resources of the organization. The organization currently stands at 1,205 officers, and that would be increased to some 1,900. Madam President, while we cannot underestimate the worth and value of the Defense Force and our sovereignty, I would wish for a moment to concentrate on a more social role that is played by that organization through their Defense Force Rangers program. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force Rangers program is very, very significant. On the 25th of May of this year, I participated in the installation ceremony of the Rangers program. Hundreds of our nation's young people, youths, were assembled at the Coral Harbour base with one mind and one purpose. These Rangers have taken up the challenge to make a difference in their environment by influencing the lives of their peers. They are to be commended for their perseverance and effort. The Rangers program, Madam President, is a voluntary program. It has for many years been successful in producing well-rounded and disciplined citizens of our country. The Defense Force Rangers is steadily becoming a model of excellence for youth organizations, and I witnessed the culmination of their hard work and sacrifice that will obviously lead to their future success once they remain focused. The Defense Force, Madam President, has been involved in youth development since 1995. The Ranger program was first introduced to the D.W. Davis Secondary School. Its initial goal was to redirect the pathway of challenged male students at the junior high level toward becoming more productive citizens. Since that time, the Rangers program has evolved into a vibrant youth organization with students from some 25 schools here in New Providence and 11 in Grand Bahama and Abaco. During its infancy stage, the program sought to train and mentor students toward becoming patriotic and productive citizens through character building, leadership workshops, and team building exercises. The focus of the program has shifted, becoming centered on leadership development and principles promoting the core concepts of the Defense Force. Today, Madam President, the Defense Force has inducted some 5,000 students in its Rangers programs, some 5,000. And the Rangers section currently has under its instruction approximately 700 active members representing 36 schools in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Abaco. This program continues to raise the bar, setting high standards of excellence in mentoring future Bahamian leaders. I would like to publicly recognize, Madam President, Mr. Travis Robinson, who recently won the J.A. Junior Minister Tourism Award. He is representative of the many bright minds within the program. And Madam President, I wish to mention this program, the Defense Force Rangers program, because one need to, I went and actually witnessed this. And, you know, it's seeing is believing. When I saw in excess of 700 young men and women assembled at the base, it gave me the assurance that we have a lot going for us, that we are on the right path, that there is hope. And Madam President, I would like to see the program in all schools as it produces well-rounded and disciplined young ladies and gentlemen. And so I commend the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, its Commodore and its fine officers, for the work that they are doing with that program. In turning, Madam President, I wish to turn to Her Majesty's Prison. You will recall that the recent change in leadership has taken place, whereby Acting Superintendent Patrick Wright is now at the helm, along with a female Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Bernadette Murray, the first female Deputy Superintendent of Her Majesty's Prison, and Mr. Don Clare. These three are entrusted with leading the day-to-day management of the government's reform agenda. Now, Madam President, Her Majesty's Prison has had in place for some time a number of programs that focus on rehabilitation. Madam President, in looking at Her Majesty's Prison in this budget, there are a number of things that are required. There are still too many challenges with this facility. Her Majesty's Prison maximum security has a leaky roof. The entire roof has to be changed. It's going to cost us in excess of $400,000. Overcrowding of the prison is far beyond. Maximum security was built for 200 persons. I think there are around 800 in there. 220 to now 800. The prison has in excess of 1,500 inmates in there. It is a major challenge. And so I welcome the news from the Honorable Attorney General that swift justice is needed in there. And Madam President, even though some persons do not look at how deep-seated this problem and challenge is, I would submit that there are two significant challenges there. First of all, you have a significant number of persons who are remanded at Her Majesty's Prison, unable to get trials in a timely fashion, hence the reason for bail, what the Honorable Attorney General spoke about. The second challenge, Madam President, is that, with the utmost respect, when you treat a person like an animal, they're locked away in a cell. 4 persons, they're locked away in a dormitory, a hallway that is being converted into a dormitory. They're locked in there. There's the slop and pail method of getting rid of waste. As a matter of fact, Madam President, Dr. Norwich indicated in that other place that he was quite disheartened when he went there. And Madam President, when I went there, I thought there was a fire going on inside the place. But it really was the young men in there have to actually light pieces of paper to generate smoke to keep down the stench. That is how bad it is. It is a challenge that we have to address, because these young men are coming back out into society. And when they come back out into society, we are unleashing animals on society. It has to be addressed. And we have to see it as a priority. We have to work together. And so I ask the opposition to extend the helping hand through programs, through initiatives, through support, financial and otherwise. We all have to work together to address the problem. Madam President, we have initiated our heads of national law enforcement agencies, which is critical, Madam President. Everyone, the left hand must know what the right hand is doing. It's as simple as that. Must know. And so the minister has mandated, and our heads of our national law enforcement agencies, the commissioner, the comptroller, the head of prison, immigration, they all meet to discuss matters affecting national security. Madam President, I now turn to the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, which also comes under the remit of the Ministry of National Security. In that other place, my honorable minister expressed that when he assumed responsibility for governance in 2012, the organizational structure of the Bahamas Broadcasting Corporation was not reflective of the needs of the corporation for the future, and it required a shift, a paradigm shift. It was imperative that action was necessary to ensure that quality standards on radio and television be established, initiatives introduced to develop and foster corporate pride, harmonious relations with our union partners be established, and a trained, multi-skilled, and self-motivated staff developed. Accordingly, the Board of Directors of the Broadcasting Corporation, under the able chairmanship of Reverend Dr. William Thompson, participated in a strategic forum to chart a new strategy for the future. I am pleased to report, Madam President, that it has already begun to be rolled out, and so we will see a strategy for the future. Madam President, fiscal year 2012-2013 sales revenue for the corporation is projected to decrease by some $450,000, an 8.8% drop from the previous year. This decrease is attributed to the fact that during 2011-2012, there was a general election which proved to be significant for the corporation in terms of its revenue, where they realized some $600,000 to $700,000 in gross revenues. Of course, the $450,000 shrinkage is not so far-fetched when we look at all the factors, though. It should also be noted that in the 2012-2013 budget period, ZNS, as a national responsibility, undertook the Carifta Games. Now, Madam President, you will recall that the corporation's infrastructure continues to be a financial impediment, as much-needed repairs were not done in a timely manner, and much of this continues to be outstanding. Again, like the prison, the roof at ZNS needs to be repaired. We need to ensure that a pitched roof is there to remove. We need to remove the flat roof so the water can run off easily. Madam President, you'll recall that during the midterm budget, I pointed out that ZNS pension plan paid out some $3.038 million during the downsizing exercise, resulting in ZNS monthly pension obligations going up from $43,000 to $80,000, as the number of pensioners increased from 44 to 68 almost overnight. Conversely, monthly contributions dropped from $65,000 to $41,000 due to reduced numbers of contributing staff. In essence, the downsizing exercise carried out by the previous administration resulted in the almost doubling of the contributions of the pensions at a time when the monthly contributions declined. The corporation was forced to step in and subsidize the fund on a monthly basis, thus enabling the pension trust to meet its monthly obligation. Even though the reduction in the amount due to the fund is a positive result, this has become a major drain on the cash flow of the corporation. You know, Madam President, I'm not an accountant, but I know that if your outcome exceeds your income, then your upkeep becomes your downfall. That's simple maths. And this is the kind of position that the former administration put us in. But nevertheless, Madam President, the corporation, through its executive branch, its executive arm, its board, and its able leadership, realized a number of accomplishments. As a matter of fact, Madam President, you would know that a number of persons retired and they have served a number of years at ZNS, and they are to be commended. The ZNS, in the first local television signal in high definition, they presented live coverage of the Carifta Bahamas games. They broadcasted the Chris Brown Invitational. They revamped and returned the news from Grand Bahama in the north to the national spotlight. They upgraded its website and commenced live streaming of parliamentary debates live on the internet. And they celebrated the 77th anniversary of the Radio Bahamas, commencing with the church service of Thanksgiving. So you see, Madam President, even though there are challenges within these agencies and entities, there is still hope. They're still working, and that is to be commended. Madam President, as it relates to the Parliamentary Registration Department, I am proud to take this opportunity to once again commend the hard-working officers of that department, headed by the Parliamentary Registrar, Mr. Sherlin Hall. You know, we take sometimes for granted that we have free and fair general elections in this country, but ours is a very, very good democracy, one that we can be proud of. We've had a constitutional election which was held without incident. But Madam President, there is a need for a new facility, physical facility for the registration department. As my minister announced, Madam President, plans are well underway for the relocation of the Parliamentary Registration Department to ensure that we treat them with the kind of dignity that they rightly deserve. Now, Madam President, having briefly looked at the agencies under which this ministry comes, we all would accept that crime and the economy are the two major challenges facing the country. And so I would wish to revert to my debate on crime. Madam President, we believe that police visibility goes a long way in preventing crimes and in reassuring our people. Consequently, we purchased specially designed patrol vehicles for the police force and for deployment of the streets of the capital and in particularly hotspots. This is what we refer to as our saturation patrols. The intention is to have as many vehicles in many places, particularly in our hotspots, Madam President, in order to prevent crime in the first place. To date, Madam President, this initiative has worked extremely well, as the police has been able to intercept a number of persons reoffending, committing crime, and have also captured them shortly after the commission of such crimes. The 2013-2014 budget, Madam President, of the Royal Bahamas Police Force makes provisions for funds to purchase more of these vehicles for the force. And we've also made provisions for the purchase of vehicles for stations in New Providence and certainly throughout the Family Islands. Madam President, I am pleased to report that the national CCTV project will become fully operational. Will become fully operational by July. That's the CCTV, thank you very much, CCTV program. And Madam President, we already have some footage, so I'm able to show you some of the cameras and what they're actually doing now. Right? So we're able to monitor certain areas in the capital. This government is actually making it happen. Our hotspots. Madam President, so you see, the cameras are there. We're moving very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, Madam President, in the police station, there's an article in the paper which indicate that a judge wants to see cameras in the police station. My minister has already indicated that he has directed the commissioner to ensure that cameras are installed in the police stations. So that work is well in progress. So you see, Madam President, we are not only in the city area, but we're in several other areas. Okay? 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 Some 206 cameras, Madam President, have already been installed at 83 locations throughout the island. Of these, 75 are now transmitting video streams back to the CCTV Command and Control Center. As transmission issues with the BTC network are resolved, it is expected by July all of these matters and the remaining cameras will be deployed and become fully operational. Yes, we can. Commencing next week, Madam President, we have identified, the Commissioner has identified officers who are suitably qualified to go in this Command and Control Center to ensure that we use this as an effective preventative tool. Now, Madam President, one of the other concerns that we have, obviously, Madam President, is the proliferation of firearms on our streets. Firearms. I alluded to it earlier in my presentation, Madam President, and I would like to follow my honorable minister in that other place. You know, actually today I wanted to actually bring some firearms. You could actually see it and hear the velocity of these things and see these firearms with cooling chambers. But I decided to just cool down a little, right? But I decided, Madam President, to show you some of the weapons that we have here. And in that other place, Madam President, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Norwich, he would have showed some of these weapons. And what I'm holding here, Madam President, is a 9mm Ruger pistol, a picture of it. And Madam President, what is significant about these weapons? If you look at the one to the bottom, it carries an extended magazine, a clip. So this isn't a firearm that carries 5 rounds, 6 rounds. This can carry up to 30 rounds of ammunition. 30. And if you see how small it is, it's snug, which means that it can easily be concealed. This is what the police are seizing out there. So our saturation patrols, our Operation Ceasefire is in fact working. We are actually getting results. You know, Madam President, this is a significant weapon down to the bottom here. This is a 45 Ingram Mach 10 machine gun. This is the machine gun here, and it has a silencer on it. This is what our young men are walking around our streets with. Now, obviously, this will call for some tremendous, serious action. Legal action, aggressive action. Madam President, we cannot allow the criminals to take over our streets. Here is, Madam President, another famous gun the young men decided they would want to have, the Tech-9. That clip, look at the clip, the magazine. This is what they determined that they would want to have on our streets. And Madam President, to the bottom is the AK-47. we would have had several incidents over the years with these weapons here. Several incidents. And as a matter of fact, here is a bigger picture of the AK-47, Madam President. Now, this is significant, and I thought it was necessary, Madam President, to actually show these for a number of reasons. The police has seized in recent times several of these high-powered weapons, several of these weapons, these AK-47s, and the power of these weapons, Madam President, these weapons, the velocity, the strength, they are known to actually go through walls, bullets. And this is what we have here on the streets of New Providence. Now, the Bahamas don't manufacture no weapons, you know, and so we have established a very good relationship with the Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearm Agency in the United States of America. And we're working ATF, and we're working very closely with them. But Madam President, I wanted to show those pictures because the Honorable Prime Minister made a very powerful announcement yesterday in the House, in that other place. And the Honorable Minister also supported that announcement. That is, that drastic times calls for drastic actions. And given the fact that we may be limited in our resources, the fact of the matter is that we have to make effective use of existing resources. And so if it means that, Madam President, that the Royal Bahamas Defense Force has to be combined in some way with the Royal Bahamas Police Force to ensure that more innocent lives are not lost, then, Madam President, I am here to say that I support that. Yeah. And we also need the opposition to support this move. They must be on board. Madam President, another very, very, very controversial debate going on today in some quarters is this cash for gold and this copper issue. The rise of stolen gold jewelry and copper in the Bahamas has resulted in several deaths. Several deaths, Madam President. The cash for gold businesses are becoming more popular in the Bahamas, increasing the risk of hard-working Bahamians and visitors alike being targeted. Cash for gold and copper harvesting are big money-making schemes, and criminals find that these are easy ways to make quick cash. The police have linked the cash for gold and copper businesses with the high number of robberies, armed robberies, house breakings, and stealings being recorded in our country. There is no doubt that there is a connection between crime and these types of businesses. And this was borrowed, Madam President, in a significant operation that was carried out last year by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Madam President, a team of officers executed a number of search warrants and retrieved an assortment of chains, bracelets, and even gold and silver dinnerware, including spoons and forks from these places. Can you believe that? Cash for gold places. Now, Madam President, if I may, thank you. In a report, Madam President, a report that was prepared as a result of that police operation, this is what the commanding officer had to say. As a result of the operation, a number of cash for gold outlets were targeted and warrants were executed for various stolen chains, rings, watches, etc., as a result of information and intelligence that they had gathered. An assortment of jewelry was confiscated from each of the establishments, valued in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. A number of persons inclusive of the operators, were taken into custody in addition to bundles of records that were eventually scrutinized, which resulted in the following notations. And this is what is significant. Listen to what they discovered from the information from the documents that they took from these places. Number one, the majority of persons conveying jewelries to mentioned outlets have outstanding warrants issued by the courts. You all understand? Everyone understand? Madam Secretary, you all understand what I'm saying here? That's the first thing. The second thing, cash are given far below the actual value of the jewelry. Now, y'all don't tell me if these people know what they're doing. Items are usually packaged by the proprietors and earmarked by FedEx for the United States of America and Jamaica. So when they ran the operation, they seized a number of packages ready to go, gold already melted, everything ready to go, quickly. Now, Madam President, what is even more significant, is that these cash for gold businesses are also popping up in residential areas that operate by appointment only and offer private one-on-one sessions. Madam President, and I have to point at one place. There's a place, if you go Sunshine Park, you go Blue Hill Road, you take Sunshine Park, Sunshine Way. So one corner has the name, the sign is there. Go through there. About the fifth house on the left-hand side. I was shocked. Cash for gold, big sign in front of this house. They closed up the garage, fortified it with bars and everything else, and you come to you see a little box, and you come and depart with the gold. But it raises several fundamental questions. And I heard the Honorable John Boswick may have said it just now. The left hand must know what the right hand doing. Who give these people licenses? They have license to operate. So here it is. Here it is. The police is telling you that there is a challenge, but another entity is actually given license. So then how could we complain? It's still open. But my minister announced, and I fully support, the immediate closure of these cash for gold places. So we're going to be petitioning the Attorney General for this. And we want the support. We want the hand of the opposition with us to support us on this. Oh yeah. Madam President, the police reports also revealed from their investigations that some of the operators, now I'm being very cautious, some of the operators melt down the gold items within the hour of purchasing them to avoid being arrested and prosecuted. As far as the law is concerned, Madam President, they are just as guilty as the principal offender who committed the crime itself. Madam President, this problem is not only limited to the Bahamas, but all over the world. This cash for gold and copper harvesting. According to the Washington Post, soaring prices for salvaged metals driven by a global demand in Asian markets have turned scrap into the new gold for the sticky-fingered set, leading to spikes in an array of property crimes in the Washington area alone. Manhole covers, bear kegs, light poles, air conditioning. I saw that they stole the air conditioning unit from Salem Union Baptist Church. The whole unit gone. And even catalytic converters, valued for the small amount of platinum they contain, have been targeted to feed a $65 billion industry. Can you imagine $65 billion industry being fed? In North Virginia, this year, crime reports are peppered with metal thefts. Among them, bronze cemetery flowers, the vases, stainless steel, construction edging, everything. Copper gutters, you name it, they take it. Tubing and aluminum. As a matter of fact, in some cases, thieves have put themselves in great danger by stealing live electrical wires. It happened here, as a matter of fact, on 2 occasions. One got electrocuted. Gonna steal live electrical wires. You know, Madam President, to bring the point home even more, Madam President, I have a list of the stolen jewelry that the police seized from these places, a significant number of which have been claimed by persons whose homes were broken into. Jewelry was snatched, the chain was snatched from around their neck, or they were the subject of the victim of a robbery. 4 pages. 4 pages of jewelry. And these are not individual items, you know.
Legal size pages?
Yeah. Legal size pages. Look at that. Can you believe it? Look at this. 10 silver bracelets, 5 gold bracelets, earrings, men's ID plate, angel charm, gold rope chain, links, gold rope chain. I mean, the list goes on and on, never ending. 4 pages. 10 silver chains. Can you imagine this? This is what the police sees in one operation. 4 full pages. But Madam President, let's take it further. Because I am sure that my honorable minister, we can make this happen along with our Attorney General sitting right here.
Absolutely.
But look at this. Even though our crime in the Bahamas under this administration is trending downwards, the fact of the matter is it is still too high, number one. And secondly, this cash for gold and copper business is so significant as it relates to armed robberies. For this year, from January the 1st to January the 11th, we had 506 armed robberies. Of that number, 299 robberies, or 59%, persons were targeted because of their jewelry or copper. Of the 157 robberies, 41%, or 64, were targeted because of jewelry. Of the 1,028 house break-ins, 338, or 33%, that's a third of our break-ins, that people are just breaking into people's houses to steal jewelry. Overall, Madam President, it's 35% of these crime categories that persons are actually stealing gold or copper to feed their habits. Now, that is significant, Madam President. Madam President, so I wish to commend the police, Madam President, for the fine work they're doing. They're continuing to do very good work. The police, the defense, as I indicated, the defense force recently intercepted 3 vessels with illegal immigrants on board. Prison, they're trying to do the best they can under the conditions, with in excess of 1,500 inmates in there. Madam President, in addition to that, the law enforcement arm is continuing to replenish our confiscated asset funds account. Our confiscated asset funds account. You'd recall, Madam President, that I took issue with that in terms of how the former administration spent the funds out of that particular account. I regard that as water under the bridge. What this administration is seeking to achieve, Madam President, is to replenish that fund. Law enforcement, and to ensure that the funds are used out of that account for the purpose connected with law enforcement only. Yeah. And so, Madam President, I wish to commend the recent case where officers in Grand Bahama seized or found in excess of $2 million in cash. Cash! And I'm sure that the Honorable Attorney General Office is well at hand to ensure that that money goes into the confiscated asset funds account. Madam President, another issue that is very heated is the number of persons released on bail. And I believe, Madam President, not I believe, I know that our Honorable Attorney General emphasized how office is doing to ensure that the number of persons who are out on bail, that those cases are dealt with swiftly, and to ensure that the new cases that are coming into the system do not add to the backlog. And so I commend her again for that. But what is significant, Madam President, you know, back in 2008, 2009, when I indicated that some 300 or more persons were on bail for murder, there was no way of us actually being able to determine the numbers with accuracy. And even though there still remains a challenge, Madam President, I pray for not only my ministry, but I also pray for the Office of the Attorney General. Because can you imagine, over the 5 years of the former administration's administration, in excess of 1,000 persons were released on bail for murder, armed robbery, and rape.
Wow.
That is significant. So the mammoth task lies ahead of us. But we are not here just simply to say that the task is there. We are actually giving solutions.
Absolutely.
Through our Operation Ceasefire, Swift Justice, and Madam President, in support of what the Honorable Attorney General articulated, as far as my ministry is concerned, she emphasized, the Honorable Attorney General emphasized, this issue that we're having with forensic reports, etc. And I am pleased, Madam President, to report that the Ministry of National Security is well underway with plans for the introduction of a state-of-the-art national forensic laboratory. You know, Madam President, you cannot emphasize that enough. Plans means that we have already identified the location, the conceptual drawings. We should have those in hand by the end of this month. And within this year, the forensic lab should begin moving in phases for the completion, for the establishment of their new site. You know, Madam President, this is critical because whether we wish to realize it or not, Jerome, do some calculation for me. In each case, Madam President, in each case, every time we have to send the cases off, evidence off, samples off to be analyzed, on average it costs us $3,000. Multiply 3,000 times 1,048. Now, how much is that? 3.1 million. So if we were to look, Madam President, I'm equating this to money because, you know, we're dealing with the budget. So let's talk money.
That's right.
So the 1,048 cases cost us a minimum of $3 million. At least. At least $3 million. Now, Madam President, I'm saying at least, because in some cases, you have a number of samples that require analyzing.
Right.
And the more cases you have, the more samples you have, the more money you have to spend. But what is even more significant, Madam President, is that their priorities, that is the United States where we send these things, their priorities are not our priorities, or our priorities are not their priorities. And this too was added to the backlog. This is why it is important. It is important, it is significant, it is a significant plank to establish our national forensic lab. I cannot emphasize that enough. Madam President, I have said before that our country's budget is not just a numbers game. It represents the priorities and focus of the government. We have sought to the greatest extent possible to begin the task of repositioning resources for the service, benefit, and uplifting of the Bahamian people. This government believes in Bahamians and believes that it is time for us to invest in our people. In the past year, I have been in any number of places, and I continue to believe in our Prime Minister's way of how he describes the indomitable spirit of our Bahamian people. This belief is such that it is not possible for me to accept that we in this place and those in the other place working together cannot solve the problems facing our beloved country. We are all here as representatives of the Bahamian people to enact policies to create a better future for this country. I believe that a government has no more fundamental duty than to protect the personal safety of its citizens and defend against threats to its national security, and that the interests of law-abiding Bahamians and visitors to our shores must be placed ahead of the lives of criminals. It's as simple as that. Yes, this is our 14th month of governance. Our unrelenting war on crime continues. It is a war that we will win because we have Jesus, our Savior and Christ, on our side. And we can do all things through Christ that strengthens us. This is not for the benefit of the Progressive Liberal Party, Madam President, but for the benefit of all Bahamians, all visitors. A loss in this fight is a loss for us all. And so I will invite the opposition to join us. Because, as we all always say, we can all work together or we could perish as fools. Simple as that. We got to work together on these things. Madam President, in concluding, I remain thankful for the hard work being carried out each day by members of the Defense Force, the Police Force, our prisons, all of our officers who are our frontline defenders in securing our national security. I continue to believe in Bahamians, and I believe that we can and will reduce crime and simultaneously improve the quality of life of all Bahamians. For this and the other reasons that I've already expressed, I unequivocally support the 2013-2014 budget and the affiliated enabling legislation. May God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I wish, Madam President, to lay on the floor the statistics for the copper and gold. On the table, sorry. I got it. It is the 19th. Let me get my crown. Much bigger. And our crime statistics, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Ordered that these documents to lie on the table as many. As always, we thank you, Honorable Members, for your informative contribution. And the Chair now recognizes Senator the Honorable John Bostwick.
Thank you, Madam President. As usual, it is my extreme honor to stand in this upper house amongst the learned friends and honorable senators. Before I get to my comments, I must take the opportunity to join in Minister Bell's call for unity as regards how we address crime on a national level. I was incredibly pleased to hear him extend his hand to the opposition on more than one occasion during that address, and I will admit that he has caused me to soften certain comments that I had intended to make.
is a good God.
I'm a firm believer in national unity. A firm believer that we as a people are facing any number of national crises that really does call for all hands on deck. Crime being the preeminent issue. And crime will be the second part of my address. I also note as I begin that the Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Minister of Tourism, whom I shadow, was very generous in comments regarding his commitment to the consultative process that is prescribed in our Westminster politics. I confirm that he has extended his hand to me as his shadow, and he has invited the sharing of information and the sharing of the government's intention in tourism with the opposition via myself, and we have exchanged some thoughts and some ideas, most pointedly and most recently to do with tourism crime initiatives, which I will discuss at the end of this presentation as well. General observations, and again, these are observations made through listening to the budget presentations thus far, and it strikes me, as again was confirmed by Minister Bell, has been confirmed by other members. This is now 40 years, come 41 years, and yet we're still talking about deficit spending. I've heard former ministers of finance confirm that we've had 40 years of deficit spending. Cannot continue. Cannot continue. Can't operate any establishment, any entity, not even a household, on 40 years of deficits, or 40 years of failing to meet your obligations. I also note, as I noted during the midterm budget presentation, that we are seeking to increase our government revenue primarily through addressing our taxation structure, something, again, which I feel is overdue, something we must do, whether it is distasteful or not. However, there's, again, in my opinion, other ways and methods, which I shall discuss pointedly, where we can look for revenue outside of seeking to tax the private and business sector, shifting limited savings into public hands, which, again, as the side opposite has admitted, has for years, by both administrations, not been properly managed, i.e. public asset, public funds have not been properly managed. I also want to join with the minister. He hit on a topic that I actually very much support, having been personally the victim of home burglary, where all electronics were left and only jewelry was targeted, and a strong call for, if not the elimination of these cash for gold businesses. The fact that we are hosting a pawn shop on our main street, in the middle of Bay Street, it's a pawn shop, and you find this, and now we hear that they are creeping into our neighborhoods. I think that the minister's report, in fact, the minister again preempted something. I have been putting together numbers that would reflect the increase of armed robbery since the licensing of these cash for gold businesses, and the minister's information is very spot on. And although being the capitalist as I am, I do find it hard to say simply eradicate such businesses, but I'm leaning more and more towards that. And if we are going to have businesses or a business involved in the redeeming of precious metals, maybe that should be operated by the central bank and nothing else. And that is where my research was leading me, Minister Bell, and it seems that you are moving in a certain direction. The other general observation I make is that
Next to me.
the other general point I would make is that I have yet to hear any mention of drastic land reform. And I would have thought that in this administration that is aggressively promoting belief in the Bahamas, and an administration that in past history has been very critical about measures that were put into place in '92 allowing the transfer of land assets, that this administration would take the opportunity to look seriously at protecting our primary resource and look towards the limitation of land sales to foreigners, moving aggressively towards long-term leaseholds, especially at this time when we are facing potential economic collapse. I mean, the first thing that would happen is that the foreign elements will come in and wholesale acquire our land. And so I think we need to look at the protection of that resource, that primary resource, through which all other factors of production and fruit are made available. It is through your land that you're able to borrow capital and able to employ labor, and therefore to generate wealth. And if we lose our land, we will not have access to that capital, and we'll be left with labor in our home jurisdiction. It's a formula that can be very easily retarded just by saying, you know. There has been much mention, and I've been interested in listening to it. And again, I am cautious at how far I go, because I would like to go very deep into the discussion of energy solutions as being preeminent and very necessary to be addressed. The Minister of Tourism stated that our energy costs are making it hard to compete with our neighbors. He estimates that in some cases is up to 300% greater than our neighbors. Minister Bell, again, has pointed to the need to address ourselves. And again, I think this urgency, and I was looking for something in our budgetary communications that would have said the government has decided or come to a point of making a determination towards the very urgent need to reduce our energy costs. Well, again, there have been some statements, but yet we would like to see the commitment to those statements, the actual action, to see it happen. Again, as the Shadow Minister for Tourism, I also looked to hear some direct comment as to how we're going to address our national air carrier and airlift that is going to be necessary to service our new hotel. Again, it seems to me that there are some very poignant advantages that can be taken at this time, especially where we have the Chinese putting in such a massive investment, making commitments to bring in tourists from new jurisdictions in Southeast Asia. It would be an opportune time for Bahamas here to look to partner with global airline giants such as Cathay Pacific or Qantas or Singapore Airlines, and seek to take advantage of our access to landing rights in the North American markets. Seek to potentially create a hub out of Nassau International Airport, to see the expansion of the airport to service, because already our new airport is too small. These things, again, very, very important. And as a final general comment, as I get into where I intend to go today, is the serious commitment beyond statements in our budgetary communication toward the new diversification of our economic model. Again, Senator Bell spoke to the fact that our model continues to be based on two service tiers, financial services, as he referred, banking, and tourism services. And it would appear to me that although those are, it is very necessary to shore them up and to diversify those industries themselves, it is also at the same time very necessary on an urgent basis to expand our economic base. I noted also that the Minister of Tourism began this discussion and indicated that he could see great opportunity for economic growth through the servicing of our tourism industry, the servicing through local manufacture of product and local production of food and beverage to supply that industry. Those are both concepts that I support to an extreme measure. As I have said, I have been given the honor by my honorable leader, Dr. Hubert Minnis, to be the Shadow Minister of Tourism. And so I will attempt to focus my budgetary comments and comments in this budget debate in the tourism sector, and resist temptation to comment on a wider base of issues, especially as I do have much opinion on crime and other issues that have been detailed here today. The tourism. I said tourism is a present cornerstone of our economy, and it is my view that it must be strengthened, enhanced, and diversified. Bahamian ownership in all areas of the industry, from resort development and construction, supply of foodstuffs and disposable items, must be encouraged. When I look at recent sale of hotel properties, and with knowledge in my legal practice that there are other opportunities available, one would hope to see budgetary provisions and concessions and incentives laid out towards Bahamians acquiring these hotel properties, where one could see Bahamians doing the quote-unquote paper deals that involved the recent acquisition, for example, of Emerald Bay property in Exuma, rather than to see that those falling into foreign hands going forward. There are also there are also opportunities with hotel properties available on the market at present time that all, in my opinion, all and every incentive should be given towards, and encouragement should be given towards Bahamian groups to move to the front in acquiring these properties. The obvious advantages of this from an economic base are numerous. Primary one being the fact that the revenues would be staying at home rather than being repatriated outside the country, as all of our tourism industry, the vast majority of our tourism industry, is foreign owned and foreign operated. I agree with the Minister of Tourism in his call that we must aggressively develop the ability to supply our tourism industry with all of its foodstuffs through the creation of agro industries and light manufacturing industries. I have had the opportunity to write to most of the issues which I discuss here. And with regard to agricultural reform, it would appear to me that there are things that we could do in a very short-term basis, and an immediate-term basis, that would make an impact, if not drastically impact, our gross domestic product and our present trade deficits. We have now an ambassador of trade and an ambassador of agriculture in the form of, if I'm correct, Mr. Arnold Forbes, the Honorable Arnold Forbes. And it would appear to me that we could now release such persons, and rather than focus so almost tunnel vision on the expansion of our financial services sector when we go on these trade missions, we can look to expand our agricultural industry. We could look to have trade missions that are focused on attracting all of the world's largest processing agencies to work alongside with our farmers. It's often a myth. I think it's a too widespread myth that we can't grow food in the Bahamas. And I think that that is just absolutely a fallacy in perception. The truth is that we grow so much produce in the Bahamas that the vast majority sits and rots before it can get to our markets, so even our local markets. Even today, my most esteemed honorable mother was down at the produce exchange buying peppers. And there's so many peppers in the produce exchange right now, they're basically giving them away. So she's spending her day in retirement, making preserves and making peppers and making jams because she has so much pepper. The same can be said with regard to onions, tomatoes, cucumbers, any numbers of crops that are perishing in our family islands or perishing on our dock sides. And yet we have issues with regard to our balance of trade, and we're importing 90% of what we consume. Again, the mismanagement is gross, and it needs to be halted and addressed with a sense of urgency. One of the things, again, at this budgetary time, that one would suggest is that apart from our local market, we have, as the Ministry of Tourism pointed out, we have a large tourist market in our resorts and in our cruise ships coming in and out. There is the ability, and when you add those numbers, we take a marketplace from 400,000 to nearly 5 million, a potential customer base. Those North American tourists could be introduced to our high-end Bahamian organic product. Why I say that is because our agricultural lands are fertile soil. They're virgin soil. They're not treated. They're not pesticides. We can actually produce in the Bahamas on our first cycle of entering the agricultural industry, not farming, because farming is one element. We must have farming, we must have processing, we must have transportation and distribution to market in order to have a full agricultural industry. It would seem to me a unique opportunity for entrepreneurial opportunities and entry into the marketplace for Bahamian venture capitalists and such. It would also be an awesome opportunity to retard our balance of trade while we export a high-end product, organic product, to that top 2% who will pay anything for the best of the best. Top dollar. But we must now think holistically and not just think of agriculture as the expansion of farming. If we don't address at the same time transportation and processing, then again we've been shooting ourselves in the foot and we'll have more produce to rot on the docks. This move towards agriculture at the same time as you see the marriage to tourism will also promote us having food self-sufficiency, i.e. food security. We're now living in a very vulnerable world. Very vulnerable world. And Madam AG, I'm guilty of agreeing with the side opposite in some instances. So,
Clear mitigation.
Again, and again, Madam AG, as you will note, I'm actually reading from a document that I'm not yet prepared to table. But you will see that I have had these positions ever since I produced the Bahamas 2020 vision some 3 years ago. And I'm reading these positions as from a stated position that is not new to me. Again, the move towards agricultural self-sufficiency, I think and the import of the same leads again towards some things that Minister Bell said, towards national security itself. We've seen that in recent times, even with the movement of certain storms, you can see a disruption of the shipping traffic between the Bahamas and the U.S. If we have a 2, 3, 4-week disruption in ships coming to the Providence, we look at the very real possibility of running out of food in 2013. The same could be said with regard to gas supplies, gasoline supplies, with regard to fuel supplies to run our generators at BEC. We run, it's a very, very scary, but yet very real potential scenario. It's a possibility, but it should not be. In 2013, it should not be. Should not be conceivable that the Bahamas could run out of food in 3 to 4 weeks. Impossible. But yet it's where we are today. As we talk about tourism and diversification, I feel that we must start here. Again, we must look at, while it is necessary to diversify our economy on a broad basis, we must look at what we have. And we must show up what we have. before we go and start creating new things. This is my humble opinion. And I have proposed before and propose again that we have certain national assets here that we can develop in our tourism industry. And even in this budgetary cycle, we could look towards some of them in a broad range. And again, I see this administration looking towards this way. The development of historical tourism. Our country is so rich in history. History is a commodity. And in fact, there are other jurisdictions around the nearby region that are trading on our history as if it somehow is their history. From Charleston, North Carolina, to St. Augustine's, Florida, the Keys in Florida, they're trading on pirate history. The Bahamas is the pirate republic. The Providence is the capital of the pirate republic during the golden era of piracy. And we should not allow them to exploit our history. I have proposed, and again proposed, the bringing to life of our history. I happen to live within the precincts of number 9 Bain and Grant's Town, which is downtown New Providence. And I have lived here for some 16 years, 16, 17 years. And I tend to envision this very small district as the most interactive theme park on planet Earth. And I see no reason why we can't begin to address ourselves and treat downtown historical Providence as a theme park and manage it as such. And instill and install within this theme park live period characters. Blackbeard should be walking and talking. He should be drawing water out of his well, which is located on the northwestern corner of the British colonial. It's still there. But today, we have that location surrounded by a 3-foot chain link fence and a little tiny white sign that says Blackbeard's Well. An awesome piece of history like that, which should be almost a pilgrimage destination for now heading into the second generation of North American raised on Pirates of the Caribbean Disney movies, which are all really based on the history of the Bahamas, but yet we don't exploit that. It's about the Bahamas, but yet we don't exploit it. Right now, we should be able to walk outside. This very room, in fact, has great history, great pirate history, and stories of pirates parking their galleons across the road, pointing their 12 guns at the Houses of Parliament, and telling people to re-vote certain ways. Look outside, you want to vote again. And votes being changed. It's a sordid history, but it's history. And again, we can bring that to life, and tourists can experience this and walk away with something palatable. Again, when we look at the advantages, the economic advantages and the economic opportunities that could be brought to every level of Bahamian when you implement such policies, from those who are less skilled, who can be period actors, from those who can be involved in historical tours and historical walking tours. I have maps and such things where you can show there can be any numbers of walking tours in and around. In fact, the walking tour has become a major tourist attraction in other jurisdictions. It brings people a little closer. Walking tours of Nassau, we could have a walking tour called Walk the Pirate Walk, Talk the Pirate Talk. There are so many locations within 800 to 1,000 meters of Prince George Dock, where 4 million tourists land, that are steeped in pirate history. The location where Calico Jack met Anne Bonny. Calico Jack is Jack Sparrow from this movie. He met her downtown Nassau. What story could we tell? How romantic could we make that? We could put them on the street. Tourists could pay $5 a photograph. And they would. And they would. We could have, I see this administration is promoting religious tourism. Very interesting. We could have walking tours of every cathedral within the downtown area, and some of these buildings are historic beyond belief. The Anglican Cathedral is downtown, the Greek Orthodox Cathedral, the Catholic Cathedral, Zion Baptist, St. Andrew's Presbyterian, Trinity Methodist, Bethel Baptist, St. John's Native. These are all within walking distance of downtown. Wesley Methodist. These last few churches are churches formed by free slaves within years, 2 to 3 years of emancipation. Great history. Within walking distance for 4 million tourists. Again, as a resident of downtown, I've also had the privilege of residing in other major cities around the world. I did my legal training in London and had the opportunity to work for almost a full year in 30 Lincoln's Inn Field in Southampton Row, Chancery Lane, London. And the ability to walk around that old city is fascinating. The history. And it struck me that there's some things missing from our experience in downtown Nassau. Again, a town soaked in history. I proposed the creation of artisan zones, pedestrian zones in the city district. Proposed at the northern ends between Bay Street and Wood Rogers Wharf of Market, Frederick, Charlotte, Parliament, and East Street. Wood Rogers at Festival Place in Bay Street between George Street and East Street. We limited to single-lane taxi service, town shuttle, town resident. You know, you should have town residents in town. What I said. Town resident or business license holders only. Regular 2-lane traffic entering Bay at East Street, and eventually a dual lane north running Elizabeth Avenue, thereby revitalizing Dalsworth Street in the eastern end of town. Bus depots to be created at the former Market Street City Market site and former Casey car sales lot. Again, these lots are 3 years old. Between Elizabeth and Victoria Avenues. We need to create a town shuttle services running from those spots past major parking installations. Parking should be a revenue generator in downtown Nassau by 2013. I'm one of those, and I know the taxis will be upset, but I think taxis have killed downtown. We have so many taxis on Wood Rogers. We don't need taxis on Bay Street as well. Taxis have eliminated the ability for locals to come and shop on Bay Street. If we were to create such an artisan zone in the defined precinct, I suggest that that zone would rival Covent Garden or Leicester Square in London, would rival the Village in New York, as landlords would be incentivized to convert unused upper floors into high-end town living accommodations. Again, that's something that's missing from New Providence. I lived on Southampton Road. I could walk to Trafalgar Square, Covent Garden, Leicester Square. The city was alive. Alive. If you walk down Bay Street right now and you look to the second story, it's empty. The third story, empty. Loft spaces. This is prime real estate. Prime real estate, and perfect for the living accommodation for the professional class who live and work, spend more time in downtown than they do in the suburbs. When you depopulate a city, what is going on here is what happens. We don't abandon cities. We live in cities. There are many things that can be done to enhance even just with Providence tourism product. And the government can play a role and lead the role towards that. Again, from my London living experience, the 12 o'clock strike of Big Ben drew thousands every day. Everybody waiting for it to strike 13 and herald the end of the world. But every day, trust me, today at 12 o'clock, 12 noon, there will be thousands of people standing on the Big Ben, just waiting. We have 3 forts located in the downtown vicinity. Why can't we fire our cannons at 12 o'clock and have them echo from Fort Charlotte to Fort Castle to Fort Montague? And we would all know it's 12 o'clock. And our tourists would all know that there's something interesting going on. a signature. I propose further the creation of native zones throughout the Bahamas, beginning with New Providence. My living quarters and my ardent loyalty to the Saxon superstars takes the Saxon superstars. Takes me regularly into or from the Fort Hill into Mason's Addition. And my exercise routes take me from the northern side of 66 Steps to the top of the ridge and down the other less known steps on the other side that lead into Mason's Addition. There are actually 3 sets of them. Some of them more impressive in my view than the 66 Steps. They're longer. And again, from going into certain areas of London, near and around Covent Garden, it struck me that this entire area could be turned into an artisan zone, where these very same little wooden houses could be brightly colored and turned into destination spots, where native jams are made, native pastries are made, native arts and crafts are made, like Camden Town, for example, in London. You see, my learned friend, so you can get some spiritual. Okay? Different flavors. You could get tamarind jam, tamarind jelly, and experience these real, authentic Bahamian experience. The tourist that comes to the Bahamas more and more is seeking that experience. More and more, as you sit on the corner in Baintown, you see Majestic Tours parks, you see Bahamas Experience bus parks. They want to come and see where the people live, how they live, what they're doing. Which is why we're finding that more and more tourists are wandering unescorted over the hill and finding themselves in dangerous situations. But I support the development, the exploitation of these environments, the raising up of these environments, and actually making them destinations. I know with interest, as I talk about product diversification and tourism, that this administration has entered into a relationship with subsidiaries of the Genting Group, if my information is correct, with regards to a cruise ship that will be coming from Florida to Grand Bahama to Bimini. And one of the things I have long been promoting is the creation of such inter-island-based cruises, where you would hopefully see such cruises and such entities go another step, where there are actually 3, 5, 7, 10-day cruises of the Bahamas as a tourism product. Persons can go to Greece and do a Greek Isle tour. They can go to Italy and do an Italian Isle, never leave the Greek Isles, never leave the Italian Isles. The Bahamas is the most unique archipelago on the planet Earth. There's no place better for that type of venture. Every island that we have is different. The people are different. The people are actually different. Different shades of black, from black to white. Different accents. Pink sand, gold sand, powder sand. From mosquito to sandfly, as Mr. Scott says. We have unique opportunity, an incredibly unique opportunity. Panama, one of our competitors, has recently, well, in recent years, started hubbing a cruise ship. Just from the hubbing of that one cruise ship, and I understand now it's up to 2, they have had to increase their air hub for persons flying in to catch the boat. Some of these cruises have 5,000 passengers. Can you imagine 5,000 people having to come to catch the boat? And they've had to expand their hotel rooms because there's 5,000 people coming to catch the boat. Some of them have to overnight. They don't have connectors. There's great economic opportunity and trickle-down effect via cruise hubbing and localized cruise hubbing. And again, as I say, each of our islands steeped in its own individual identity, its own individual history. A lot of people don't know that the first post office in the Bahamas was in the Providence. It wasn't even Harbor Island. Long Key. One of the biggest Anglican churches in the Bahamas is Long Key. Because of the history attached to Long Key and seafaring traders, and a lot of persons don't understand how we came to be here, different sets of us. Recently talking with a member of the medical profession, a strange point that he made, and it struck me how interesting that studies have shown genetic markers in the predisposition to certain cancers in the Bahamas are due to one of the largest genetic markers in the Bahamas being Jewish amongst this black population. When you look at the history of Long Key and the Isaacs and other such families that are Jewish, you come to understand these things. We host in the Bahamas some of the last remaining manned lighthouses. In fact, I think we have more than any place else in the world. These things are national treasures. These things are sort of Cape Hatteras. Cape Hatteras exists on lighthouse tourism. And that's 2%ers. That's the top 2% in the world that do that kind of tourism. That's who we need to be targeting. They don't even know that we have more antique lighthouses here in the Bahamas. I have a philosophy that sees the marriage of different elements of our economy. There are any numbers of universities and maritime institutes that would pay their own way to come here and work on conserving our lighthouses as a part of accredited programs, college programs, university programs, courses. Because the facility, a lead, crystal cut lens, these things are not available and they are priceless. The same could be said for treasure seekers. That could be a whole area of tourism. I have promoted the creation of media-based tourism. I feel that there should be a special division within the Ministry of Tourism dedicated to ensuring that the Bahamas is featured or embedded into programming on all major networks and all major target markets, including India, China, South and Latin America, Europe, and the Caribbean, and North America. One of the things that is being done, and again, quietly by the Ministry of Tourism, first done when the Honorable Tommy Turnquest, in fact, was the Minister of Tourism, is a relationship, a quiet relationship that exists between the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism and the Cartoon Network, where the Cartoon Network spends its summers in the Bahamas. They're here now. Those of us who have children know this. But what that has done is that all of the characters that are on that network are now here in the Bahamas vacationing. And so all of those cartoon heroes, followed by young North American children, in their mind, they vacation in the Bahamas. Their heroes vacation in the Bahamas. And they're being brainwashed with that from the time they're children. They are the ones pulling at their parents' arms saying, I want to go where SpongeBob is. I want to go where so-and-so is. And the Bahamas can't be a bad place if these characters are here, if they're living here, if they reside here. We should be spending our tourism dollar lobbying the Screen Actors Guild, the Screenwriters Guild, so that they write us in. When these characters on these sitcoms are going on honeymoons, when they're going on vacations, when these game shows are giving away prizes, it should always be about the Bahamas. And we could actually plot that, facilitate that, make that happen, not because it happens now, it happens by mistake, or it happens because people love the Bahamas. But it should be something that we target. I believe that, and again I note this administration is discussing this, I believe that John Canoe.
Excuse me, honorable member, I know you quite into your presentation at this time, but is your mic, in fact?
It is.
That is your mic.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I feel that Junkanoo, Raking Scrape, and other local artistry are exportable commodities. And they should be developed in our tourism product, but not just developed here locally, but exported. I feel that our Raking Scrape superstars should be at every folk festival around the world, as sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism. In Calgary, at the Stampede, in Louisiana, so that persons get experience and exposure to our traditional music. Junkanoo should be at the Rose Bowl, at Macy's Day Parade, at Carnival. Junkanoo should be on display for the world to see every opportunity we get. Should be at the Notting Hill Gate Carnival in London. We should seek to, as we are, competitive as we are, we should seek, as we come to Bay Street to beat up on one another, we should seek to go and take over those parades. Born free. I'm one of those that feel that we should push hard as we can, even in this global world where it is so much more affordable to buy items made outside the Bahamas. But we should push as hard as we can to ensure that as much of our product in our straw market is Bahamian. I do feel that we can participate in this, or government can lead the way in this. We know that our straw vendors are raising ruckus about what I feel is a very nominal charge towards their rent, quote-unquote rent, $5 a day for space in the most prime real estate in the hemisphere. Access to 4 million tourists a year at $5 a day. However, it seems to have some effect to them, so that $5 means something to them. We can give incentives to those who carry 100% Bahamian goods. Maybe make it even cheaper. Maybe eliminate all of their stamps, their stamp and their customs, anything to do with giving them an advantage. Put them in primary spots in the market. If they carry 100% Bahamian goods and have 100% Bahamian employees. Thank you. I also feel that it is time to elevate our experience in our straw markets. And again, as my Saxons like to refer to me as their consigliere, I have been pushing for Junkanoo to go 24/7, 365 days a year. Junkanoo needs to be on the front street. Junkanoo needs to be on Bay Street. There should be a Junkanoo shop or a Saxon Superstar shop on Bay Street offering an interactive experience, and interactive drum making experience, interactive mask making experience, so that the tourists can come and immerse themselves in our culture. We want to get more than $2 off our cruise tourists. We want to get $50. We want them to pay to have this experience and walk away with that Junkanoo item that they had a hand in creating. Again, it would be much better to see such a shop in the heart of town rather than the Cash for Gold. I'm a big supporter of diversification towards the expansion of eco, conservation, and environmental tourism. Where I live on George Street, 50 George Street, tourists come to my gate every day with their cameras in order to take pictures of birds. Downtown Nassau plays host to a flock of Bahamian parrots that travel between Government House and Parliament Street. I'm sure Madam AG is very aware of them because they're all down Victoria Gardens squawking all day. And the white crown pigeon is back. We have white crown pigeon nesting in a Ponciana tree outside our office. Hummingbirds in the bougainvillea. Banana finches, weaver finches in the bougainvillea, weaving baskets. And tourists will literally come and stand to the gate to take pictures. This is downtown Nassau. That led me to do research into bird watching in the Bahamas, and there are over 167 species of bird that pass through or reside in the Bahamas that are on the bird watching international list. It's a whole area of, see, these are 2%ers, these are top 8%ers who involve themselves in this type of activity. These are money spending tourists. And again, these are money spending tourists who can afford that package deal that would bring them to New Providence, that would put them on a 70-foot hatteras and sail them around the Bahamas to look at birds all over the place. Recently, I had a conversation with the director of youth who had just come back from Inagua. And he was bouncing all over the walls because he had been in the Boston Whaler, been out in the cut between Little Lago and Inagua, right off Christophe Bay, and experienced humpback whales and their calves. And he was so excited. This is a Bahamian. And like many of us, he didn't know that you could go whale watching in the Bahamas. And that every year humpbacks pass through that cut twice a year with their calves heading to the Samana Banks. Whale watching is big money in the west coast of America. It's a resource, a tourism resource that we should be exploiting. And again, to invite those universities, those conservationists, those environmentalists to come in and study and produce documentaries, and all of this would help us. Every time I watch National Geographic and I see beautiful water, I say, oh, that's Bahamas. I don't care where it is, that's Bahamas. You could always tell it. And it goes a long, long way. And there are some very mystical spots in the Bahamas that we can develop. The Bahamas has two spots, one on Little Exuma, one on Long Island, where you can experience a true high noon during the spring equinox. A true high noon being the sun 90 degrees above your head. There are not many places on the planet Earth where you can experience that. We should be exploiting it. I hear the administration opposite talking about developing of new festivals. A Mardi Gras, carnival type festival. With the greatest respect, I think it's a reinvention of Bombay Summer, as it sounds to me. And I thought to myself, why not coordinate this with the spring equinox and sell something different? When I listened to the Honorable Prime Minister describe it, he really tied it to Junkanoo. And I like that. And I have long been promoting something that I term the International Festival of the Drum. I feel Junkanoo is based around our drummers. And I note that every nation has something to do with drummers. You have Chinese drummers, Japanese drummers, Brazilian drummers, steel drummers in Trinidad. So why not create an international festival of the drum? Just how we have our food fest every year, International Food Fest, and it brings huge crowds. We could endear ourselves in our international communities, and we can bring in drummers from around the world. Do something different. As I talk more, a little more, on this diversification of our product, I noted that the minister spoke about associations and targeting associations, and I too agree with that, with sports tourism, for example. And we are ideally suited and positioned. As we talk about developing packages that would expand our tourism outside of the province, yes, 4 million come here, but we need to get them elsewhere. The Bahamas offers the ability in one destination for 7 different types of fishing. You come to the Bahamas, again, I like to target this top 2%. I like to target that tourist who's going to come here, who's going to stay 7 to 10 days and is going to spend money. And who can afford to put $5,000 on a couple and come and sail around on the 72-foot Hatteras on a fishing package tour of the Bahamas. They can go to Andros and do reef fishing. They go to Andros and do fishing in the creek, in a fresh creek, in freshwater grouper and snappers. They can go and fish off the third largest barrier reef in the world. They can do edge fishing, deep sea fishing, flats fishing, world championship bone fishing, anywhere from Bimini to Andros, and world championship sports fishing. The same packages can be done for diving in the Bahamas. Reef dives, blue hole diving, wreck dives, edge dives, creek dives, current dives, shark dives. You can do hunting packages, golfing packages. Again, all of this could be married in with the cruise hubbing. The opportunities are endless, are really endless, really endless. One of the other things I've suggested with regard to tourism is that as we watch, and I heard the minister speak again, I have to make a point. I keep referring to hearing the minister speak, and with the greatest and in the greatest support of our honorable clerks to this upper chamber. I requested a copy of the Minister of Tourism speech so I could shadow him. And much to my disappointment that in 2013 we weren't able to produce that. The best I could do, and with the clerks working very hard, was get cassette tapes. I could not find a cassette player. I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm serious. There's one vehicle I might have been able to get access to that would have had a cassette player, and I would have had to borrow that vehicle and sit in the car to listen to the Minister of Tourism's presentation in the Honorable House of Assembly. In 2013, we must be able to put a little budgetary allocation towards a digital recording system in these chambers. A small allocation, a couple $100 should cover it. But as I say that, the Minister of Tourism noted the presence of not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms in competing jurisdictions, and more coming online. It is my view that we don't need to fear this. We don't need to concern ourselves. Well, we do need to concern ourselves, but not with fearful concern of the emerging Cuban market. I feel that with the level of tourism expertise that we have had in the Bahamas, we should be leading that expansion. We should be exporting our tourism expertise. We should be leveraging our Bahamian dollar south, where it has some value, towards acquiring tourism properties, towards exporting our executives. Our executives, our tourism executives are in Dubai. They're all over the world, running 5, 6, and 7-star resort installations. We should ensure that we dominate the Caribbean as far as professional expertise, and then move towards owning those opportunities. Naturally, all of this hinges on education. All of the type of tourism diversity, the diversification in the product that I have promoted here, would necessitate and inform people. People informed towards the opportunities, towards ownership, towards providing product in a diversified tourism industry, as well as persons who are informed enough to educate tourists on historical tourism and walking tours and such things. I also feel that our hotel training education, our hospitalities education, should become an exportable commodity, where persons come from all over the world seeking the opportunity to train in the Bahamas. It should continue. It should be re-established. And a little more on economic diversification. As I've said, the expansion and diversification of our tourism industry really does lend itself to the greater expansion of our economy as we seek to, one, own our tourism sector, and two, supply it. Primary to agro-industry, which will have the knock-on effect of food self-sufficiency. We need to develop our fisheries. And I'm one that says that we don't have to drag net our banks. We have the right to fish up to 200 miles east of our most eastern islands. We need to go and fish the ocean. We need to go east of San Salvador, east of Cat Island, east of Ragged Island, where persons are coming from as far north as Carolina to fish. And as far south, it's the other side of the Dominican Republic, to fish, where we don't fish, for what we don't fish for. And again, we need to look aggressively at targeting processes to marry our farming industry. I also suggested we use our trade ambassador to target the light manufacturing industry, to go to our new emerging super blocks, BRIC being Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and to encourage them and to educate them, inform them as to the trade advantages of going to my learned friend's home island, Grand Bahama, and taking advantage of their warehouse district, taking advantage of their container port, taking advantage of their bonded situation, taking advantage of the trade and tariffs, the trade agreements and the treaty agreements we have with large consuming markets, being North America and Europe, so that they will send goods and have add-on value, finishing value, done here in the Bahamas. These type policies are the type policies we need to move towards in order to aggressively retard our trade deficit. These are the things that I personally been looking for in budgetary communications. How long is left? 2 minutes left. Time flies. I want to move very quickly because with 2 minutes I'm not going to have the time that I thought I would have. The Minister of Tourism was kind in stating that he and I have shared some positions. And as the Minister opposite has pointed out, crime is the issue that threatens to derail all of this. All of the diversification which I talked about is neither here nor there if we can't police this country, and if we can't police primarily our tourism district. It is my honest fear that we cannot continue to flirt with the potential disaster caused by inability to control crime in a concentrated, easily definable area. This being town number 9, which is the breadbasket of our economy and the center of both our primary industries, tourism and financial services. I say that as we have experienced violent attacks on tourists within these areas, murder of one, robbery of an old lady going to church. And again, this is my hometown. This is where I live. I have proposed to the minister whom I shadow what I have termed TNT. TNT stands for Tough 9 Tourism Crime Prevention Measures. And with the time left, I will only be able to give you the headings. I feel that we must clearly define our tourist zones. Very, very clearly defined. And again, a lot of this has been spoken to by my learned friend. We must ensure immediate and urgent saturation of CCTV systems throughout our zones. And that is the continuation of a policy put in by the acronym that I see this administration has embraced. I feel that we can have true public-private partnerships where there are budgetary constraints, we need to reach out to the private sector. The private sector has installed CCTV systems throughout their establishments, inside and outside. And recently, as you could see in the Boston Marathon bombing, it was private and public security systems, as we saw with the murder of the tourists at the bottom of the bridge. There was, again, private security footage that led to a very quick arrest. I feel that the government should reach out to those private concerns and seek to form a system where the government can have access to this footage, can have access to these databases. Even if the government has to give, again, concessions and such things. My time is up. And so Madam President, I can only wish Godspeed, and I pray great success in the crime prevention measures. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Minister. I couldn't help but think as you spoke that I trust your speech gets wide circulation to the entrepreneurs of this country, because I'm sure they ought to be able to do quite well with the wonderful ideas that I've heard. Thank you. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Gary Sawyer.
Good afternoon. Madam President, I rise today in support of the bill for the appropriation of diverse sums of money to defray the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Before I begin my contribution, if I may, Madam President, pause to wish my mother, Lola Sawyer, a happy 79th birthday. I am glad that God has granted her a long life, and I wish her many more. I would also like to wish Bahamians across the length and breadth of our land a happy 40th anniversary of independence as we celebrate 40 years of nationhood. We must look ahead, doing our utmost to leave a better country to future generations, so that 40 years from now, at our 80th anniversary of independence, generations will be ever so proud of this little nation of ours. And Madam President, it begins with this budget. This 2013-2014 budget will, in essence, be the first budget to be fully crafted by the current Right Honorable Prime Minister and his team of exceptional talent, as they are truly a new generation of leaders. The previous budget of 2012-2013 was primarily designed by the former government and was tabled only weeks after the May 7th general election, leaving very little time for adjustments to be made. As the Right Honorable Prime Minister noted in his budget communication, this is a pivotal budget in the history of our small nation. Madam President, we are assembled here in 2013 at a crossroad, at a crucial juncture. We can continue in the ways of our predecessors with out-of-control spending, reckless mismanagement of public funds, living on the brink of financial disaster. Or we can choose another road by tightening our belts, trimming out the fat, and the out-of-control spending, unlike the former administration. We must enforce fiscal discipline, which will bring order and stability to our governance once again. We must prioritize our needs and delay our wants until stability has been restored to our Bahama land. In trimming this budget, we must all understand we don't have an endless supply of money, and funds should only be directed at this nation's needs and essential services. Unfortunately, this has to be the order of the day, as this is where the disastrous mismanagement of the former administration has left us at this present time. We must live and govern within our means. I have said this before. When our outgo continually exceeds our income, our upkeep will lead to our downfall. Let me repeat that in budgetary terms. When your expenditure continually exceeds your revenue, out-of-control spending will lead to your financial collapse and continued downgrading. We add to budget responsibly. So we have to act. We must act. We must be proactive. And yes, we are acting as we seek to address these issues in this 2013-2014 budget. This budget reverses the growth of government debt and places us on a path to secure financial footing. We are committed to running the government with well over $100 million less in recurring expenditure than we did in the previous fiscal year. And again, I remind you that we were not the architects of that budget. At the same time, we are increasing capital expenditure for both the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force in our commitment in the fight against crime. And I'd like to just stray for a minute from what I have written here. Many of us, I'm sure, will recall the father of our nation, the late Sir Lyndon Oscar Penlin. Way back when, he was a visionary leader as well, and he saw many, many years down the road. And he knew back then that we would be faced today with the element of crime that we have if it wasn't put in check back then. And I remember as a youngster in my parents' house, people literally went around knocking on door to door, putting fear in people. They had shirts printed up. They had posters. They ran ads. They did a media blitz all across the length and breadth of this country, putting fear in people, and it was called Kill the Bill. What they were telling people, they were going to draft the young people out of society and put them into a army, which put the fear in every household. Every mother's heart was aching because of that. But it wasn't that. It was about putting them into, to focusing them and directing them on a path where we wouldn't be where we are today. That's what you call forward thinking. Unfortunately, it was killed at that time because of bad publicity. But we wouldn't be where we are today if that would have been instituted back then. That's my view. Madam President, we on this side do not have the luxury and good fortune of having a biased press on our side. The press, the Tribune in particular, buried Moody's analysis of the proposed budget deep in their paper. Something that should have made headlines was found in the Tribune's business section on the 3rd page. But nevertheless, Moody's stated that the budget hit the right notes and that the Christie administration had put a brake on the national debt growth. Madam President, financial institutions on the outside looking in are giving us a thumbs up, a positive thumbs up, not a downgrade or something negative. Our goal is to see a surplus at the end of this term. We feel this is a realistic goal. Madam President, it will take a lot of discipline and constraint, but we must all work together to achieve this. Those opposite may scoff at our goals and our projections, but they ought to be the last ones to point fingers about accuracy of projections. The former F&M Prime Minister and his colleagues were either clueless about the fiscal affairs of our country, or he and his cabinet conspired to deceive the Bahamian people. It is one or the other. There is no in between. Either one is shameful. In his budget communication on May 12, 2011, the former Prime Minister stated that the deficit was projected at $248 million. We know now that the deficit was almost $700 million, a difference of over $500 million. What kind of financial experts we had, or what manipulators should I say? Either way, I cry shame. The opposition claims we should have known about the financial state of the country. Let me ask, how could we, while in opposition, know what was going on within an F&M government, if they didn't even know themselves? Madam President, by way of information, lest we forget, in 2008-2009, they, the F&M government, estimated a deficit of 2.1%. It turned out to be 4.5%. In 2009-2010, the target was 3.9. The outcome was 5.1%. In 2010-2011, projected at 3%. And excluding the revenues from the sale of BTC shares, the deficit was 4.8%. In 2011-2012, the F&M's last budget cycle, the deficit was projected at 3%, but the outturn was 5.6%. These facts may seem insignificant, but when it comes down to dollars and cents, it is significant. They could never seem to get it right. That is why they are out and we are in. Madam President, our able team of financial ministers are competent and well capable of these financial challenges that confront us. They actually know finance. In the Progressive Liberal Party's first year, the first budget cycle was projected a deficit of 6.5%. We did better, as the deficit was lower and came in at 6.1% because of prudence in our governance. Now, coming from a government that knows finance and would never intentionally deceive the Bahamian people, we project that at the end of this fiscal period, the deficit will drop to 5.1%. Madam President, other than trimming the budget and being fiscally responsible with spending, there is another key component in reducing the deficit and moving closer to a balanced budget or a budget surplus, and that is the enhancement of the collection of revenue. Several measures are now in the works to enhance the collection of revenue, which would increase the amount of revenues collected in the fiscal year, which in turn would reduce the deficit. The establishment of the Central Revenue Agency will greatly enhance revenue collection. Additionally, we are taking steps to modernize the administration of two of our important revenue streams, customs and real property tax. Madam President, I applaud the government for introducing the real property tax amnesty program. It has produced $9.1 million in 3 months from March through May. More could be done with real property tax collection, but we are on a good start. Reforms to custom operations will require all large importers here in New Providence to file customs declarations electronically. This will again streamline the customs clearance process and free up resources for deployment elsewhere within the Customs Department. The implementation of a VAT-added tax, VAT is set for 1st of July 2014. The implementation of this tax regime will involve public consultative process. With the introduction of VAT, customs import duties will be greatly reduced as to not bear additional tax burdens on our citizens. All in all, Madam President, the government has taken all necessary steps to enhance revenue collection, and I commend them for this. Madam President, I now turn to capital expenditure. Recognizing our steady determination to bring this crime wave under control, we sought to increase the capital budget for both the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. We are allocating $2 million for the acquisition of new police vehicles in the coming fiscal year. Since coming to office, we have allocated $8 million to the police force to allow it to increase its manpower by over 450 officers. The budget for the police reserves has been increased by over $500,000. There will be $175 million invested over a 5-year period for the modernization in the Marine fleet of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. This will enable and equip Defense Force personnel to better patrol our seas and borders and protect our marine resources. The budget for new Defense Force officer recruits have been increased by $2.1 million. Madam President, we will not waver in our commitment to our armed forces and our commitment to defeating this crime wave that has grappled our nation for far too long. $10 million has been allocated for urban renewal and the housing repair project, which will employ young men throughout our communities. Madam President, $30 million has been allocated in education, specifically for special need children. I would like to pause here and thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister for taking the time out of his busy schedule during the budget debate to attend the graduating ceremony of 13 children from the Every Child Counts school in Abaco. There was also a team of persons that came along with him who will be very instrumental in bringing about change for a segment of our society that has for far too long been ignored and almost forgotten. I would also like to commend the entire leadership and faculty of Every Child Counts School for what they have achieved over the years. They are truly a godsend to the school and indeed our country. They are leading the way for brighter days for the exceptionally talented children of our society. This school environment should be duplicated throughout our highlands. May God continue to bless them in all of their endeavors. And it made the front page of the Abaconian with the director of the school and the Prime Minister and the stewards. It was a wonderful day. I mean, it brought tears to most of the people in the school. It was just something that was awesome. That is the kind of leader that we have today. And a man of compassion and conviction and believes in it. And he is going to put action where his belief is. I thank you, Prime Minister. Some of the funds for education will also help move the College of the Bahamas into university status. $5.5 million is allocated for the construction of new primary and secondary schools in Anagua, San Salvador, Gregorytown, and Low Sound. This triples the sum allocated in the 2011-2012 budget, the last F&M budget. We are constructing many hospitals across the land, with 2 to begin in the new fiscal year, 1 in South Eleuthera and 1 in Cat Island. We are demonstrating once again that we are a caring government. The tangible things that this Christie-led government will be felt all across the Bahama land, from Grand Bahama in the north to Anagua in the south. $10 million has been allocated for the construction of multipurpose sporting facilities to assist with youth development. This is much needed in our family islands, and I would like to thank the Prime Minister for including Abaco in these plans. Madam President, while speaking about sports, I would like to wish all the participants good luck who are competing at this week's RBC 2013 Bahamas National Swim Championship held right here in Nassau. I would like to especially wish the Abaco Swim Club the best of luck, and I am sure they will make Abaco proud. As I near the end of my contribution, I wish to comment about 2 concerns I share with many Abaconians on 2 issues. Firstly, the landfill site at Snake Key. Although I share the disappointment in the mismanagement of the landfill, I am happy that central government will soon be directly intervening and will take control of this site to bring our city landfill back to its original intent, which was a landfill site and not a dump, where no burning was to be conducted. Secondly, our roads in Marsh Harbor. I am fully aware that the conditions of the road in Marsh Harbor, in the Marsh Harbor area, didn't happen or evolve overnight. The condition is due to many years of consistent neglect, and maybe I should say willful neglect. I have read numerous comments that have been made by persons. I don't know where their voices were during the last where their voices were during 15 of the last 20 years when the F&M was in power, and the Prime Minister then was from Abaco. And also, Marsh Harbor was represented by an F&MP for 15 of those 20 years. They said nothing when the roads in Cooperstown were asphalted, and the road that is in front of the former Prime Minister's house in Cooperstown was cemented with 6 inches of concrete. Not a word. They were mute, Madam President. But, Madam President, Rome was not built in a day. and due to budget constraints and primarily due to the financial mismanagement by the previous government, our hands have been tied. I am also aware that some patchwork has been done, but due to numerous reasons, it has in some cases worsened the situation. I am also happy to say that this will soon be rectified, and I am sure that when all is said and done, the potholes will be eliminated throughout the main artery of Marsh Harbor. I am happy to report that we now have a government that listens, and when finances permit, they act. So stay tuned. You will not only hear, but will see. Madam President, as I conclude, let me paint the picture to Bahamians everywhere and remind them that just one short year ago, the position we found ourselves in, our hands were tied. On day one, we were met with hundreds of millions of dollars in outstanding debt. The Treasury was broke. Yes, I repeat, the Treasury was broke. We had to borrow funds not to invest in job creation or infrastructural upgrades, but to pay for bad decisions made by the former administration. Cost overruns were the order of the day. Madam President, the mismanagement of public funds by the F&M just in Abaco. Well, where do I start? Over $4 million in cost overruns in bringing water to Green Turtle Key. The F&M grossly mismanaged the public funds of the country. They spent approximately $105 million on a BBC power plant and didn't even have the proper transmission lines and transformers in place to facilitate the distribution of the electricity that was generated there. This plant was estimated to have should have only cost $55 million. The cost overruns between the BBC power plant, the government complex, water plant in Green Turtle Key, and the Marsh Harbor International Airport together totaled approximately $100 million. Yes, you heard me right, the cost overruns. Now we wonder why we don't have asphalt roads in Abaco. If they would have been fiscally responsible instead of physically irresponsible, Abaco could have had streets paved of gold. In addition, the F&M government spent over $100 million in cost overruns with New Providence Roadworks. Total reckless mismanagement of the people's purse. We met on day one over 30,000 unemployed, suffering Bahamians who were crying out for help and hope. We met on day one over 4,000 homes in various stages of foreclosures. We met a motor count that had doubled when we came back into office. Yes, Madam President, they are the undisputable facts. That's where we found ourselves. A year later, the unemployment rate has already started to drop. Light is appearing at the end of the tunnel. We are getting our physical house back in order. When looking at our promises set out in the Charter for Government pledge, we came through. Let's look at our pledge for the first 100 days. We created a ministry for Grand Bahama. We reintroduced urban renewal. We reestablished the Ministry of Financial Services and Investment. We brought to Parliament the Employment Pension Fund Protection Act. We fulfilled the promises to bring a referendum to the people on a national lottery. We reintroduced a Constitutional Reform Commission to look into possible constitutional reform for our independent nation, and much more, in spite of a mess that the former government left us with. Madam President, we have been here before. We have been asked again to grab the wheel of the ship in mid-storm. We will not let the Bahamian people down. The sun is peeking through the clouds. The calm is almost here. Yes, the storm will soon be over. Madam President, budgets like the one we have presented, we will not be thanked today, but 5, 6, or 7 years down the road from now, this generation will look back and say, thanks to the Christie-led government in 2013, who led the will, for taking a stand, for looking out for our future, and not continuing on a path that was leading us to destruction. Thanks for the visionary leadership of our leader and our captain. We now have a sober leader, the Right Honorable Prime Minister. With him, we will weather the storm. and he and his team will lead us to a safe harbor. There is a fresh breath of air and optimism throughout our Bahama land. Can't you feel it? It's all around us. Madam President, with that, I support this bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Julian Russell.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, Senators, good afternoon. This afternoon, I stand to make my contribution to the bills before us, which comprise and will be included in the 2013-2014 budget. First, I must give thanks to the Almighty for allowing me to be here this time to take advantage of the privilege afforded to me by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Perry Gladstone Christie, to whom I am very grateful. Madam President, I do not take this privilege lightly. I constantly remind myself that I am here, and like all of us are here, for the benefit of the Bahamian people. I listened to remarks made on Monday by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition in the other place about leaving the patient in a wheelchair. This is a patient who came in walking. He's talking about leaving the economic affairs of this country in a wheelchair. On another occasion, in February of this year, I overheard remarks made by a very senior member of the Free National Movement, almost bragging about what he termed as the failure of this PLP government today. He said, and I quote, "They failed miserably, but of course they had nothing to work with. We made sure and left the country broke. Nothing for them to work with." Close quote. Us and them, Madam President. Madam President, the conclusion that I drew from these remarks was that the situation we found ourselves in last year was engineered, and in my opinion, it was intentional. I would like to remind us all that when a government fails, be it F&M or PLP, we all fail. The Bahamian people fail, whether PLP, F&M, DNA, or independent. Since then, I have come to believe that the Free National Movement government intentionally ran huge deficits, resulting in huge debt, which has created a situation that has literally starved the domestic economy, especially in the last 2 years of their administration. Imagine $316 million a year in debt savings and debt servicing and debt redemption. That's 18 cents out of every dollar spent in recurrent expenditure. Madam President, all Bahamians should be aware of the effects that a huge national debt has on the average individual. It not only affects government, it's not a government issue only, but it affects the average Bahamian directly in the form of us having to pay higher taxes, higher mortgage payments, higher credit card payments, higher car payments, to name a few. Additionally, for government, it creates economic instability, lack of confidence in our country's ability to repay its debt, and hence attract the type of investment that the Bahamas need. But thanks to God for the plans as communicated by the Prime Minister to eliminate the GFS deficit and return the government finances to surplus. Thanks be to God also for the good news about the number of new developments on the way or in the pipeline, as also outlined by the Prime Minister in the House of Assembly yesterday. Madam President, this budget is about people and not politics. All the indicators confirm that we are moving in the right direction, albeit in small increments, but we are heading in the right direction. When I look at some of the statistics, for example, Table 1 in the budget communication, which deals with the GDP, the growth in current price, the growth in GDP in current price and consumer price for the years 2005 to 2018, and also when I look at the labor force statistics for the years 1995 to 2012, with its sharp increases in unemployment in the year 2009 and continues in the year 2010. I also looked at the housing income, which is not included in the Prime Minister's budget communication. It does not surprise me that the Bahamian people changed government in 2012. All of the indicators were moving in the wrong direction. And as you heard earlier, Senator Bell came to the same conclusion from a crime standpoint. This country was headed in the wrong direction. Madam President, in 2012 and early 2013, this government, when realizing that budgeted revenue would fall short by $170 million, it did what you or I would do. It cut planned recurring spending by $162 million and planned capital spending by $50 million. That is a reduction in total spending of $212 million. We still had to borrow to meet our obligation, but not as much as originally planned. Hence the improvement in the planned GFS deficit as a percentage to the GDP from 6% to 6.1%. Madam President, what a way to demonstrate responsible management in a very difficult situation. Over the past year, there is no doubt that since returning to governance, this government has effectively, through very tough and prudent measures, stopped the bleeding in our economy. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Minister of Finance and his team for the fiscal prudence that has been demonstrated thus far in this administration, because I know it could not have been easy to manage the finances of this country, especially in this current climate, with all the naysaying and second guessing. I would like to encourage the Prime Minister and his team with these words from Galatians 6 and 9, Madam President, if you would allow me. Let us not grow weary in well-doing, but in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Madam President, as I stand here today, I am not only proud to be a member of this legislative body, but I am more than proud to stand here in this capacity as a native son of 8 Mile Rock, Grand Bahama, the largest settlement in the Bahamas. It is no secret that Grand Bahama over the past few years has taken major hits economically. But in spite of this, it continues to stand strong and resilient. The naysayers are trying very hard to make Grand Bahamians believe that this government has closed its eyes and forgotten about them. I want to assure the people of Grand Bahama that this government is committed in its efforts to restoring the economy of Grand Bahama by introducing new investment opportunities to the island, which will provide new sustainable job opportunities and which will, by extension, rejuvenate the economic engine of this island. There is no question that Grand Bahama is pivotal to the economic success and development of the Bahamas, and the Bahamas cannot succeed if Grand Bahama is not successful. We will be successful once again. Madam President, for the first time in years, and in just a few short months, Sunwing, a major tourism investor, will be coming to Grand Bahama, paving the way for a major restoration in our tourist product on Grand Bahama, which has been ailing for far too long. This singular investment will create 1,000 new jobs in Grand Bahama and is a clear expression of confidence in the present government. For those Grand Bahamians who say Grand Bahama is left out again in this budget, I say, hold on. I believe for sustainable growth, it is imperative that we dig ourselves out of the financial pit that we find ourselves in. This PLP government, under the leadership of the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Perry Gladstone Christie, has done it before, and it's poised to do it again. Additionally, Madam President, in short order, a decision will be made for an operator to replace the present operator at Treasure Bay Casino in Grand Bahama, resulting in preservation of jobs at that facility. As we all know, the island of Bimini is very close to Grand Bahama in proximity, and families from both islands are very closely connected to each other. Over the years, many Biminites have relocated to Grand Bahama for employment opportunity, and like Grand Bahamians, they too have experienced many challenges in finding sustainable job opportunities. Madam President, the new Genting investment in Bimini will play a major role in rejuvenating the economy of Bimini, and will not only provide much needed job and entrepreneurial opportunities for Bimini, but also provide new job opportunities for many Grand Bahamians as well, particularly those in the gaming profession who has been languishing since the close of the Royal Oasis in 2004. A new day is definitely on the horizon for Northern Bahamas, as well as the whole Bahamas. Madam President, over the past months, we have all heard about the urban renewal team in Grand Bahama. I have seen the results of their hard work and commitment to the people of the communities in Grand Bahama in spite of the naysayers. I would like to personally thank them for their hard work and their commitment every day, in spite of the many challenges they may face. Recently, while driving through an area in Marco City, I saw an urban renewal vehicle pulling up to a resident at 9:30 in the morning, delivering breakfast to a senior citizen. I later found out that this is an ongoing program in partnership with a local church. Madam President, there are many programs that Urban Renewal in Grand Bahama are involved with, which all contribute to bringing relief to the citizens of our community. I want to encourage them to continue to demonstrate every day by their actions the words of their motto, building stronger communities by transforming our college. I'd like to say you have completed a major milestone in your lives, and as you prepare to go on to college or enter the job market, I would wish to encourage you to put God first in all that you do, and He will surely direct your path. Madam President, I want to close by lending my support to this budget and these bills before us. And I wish to repeat once again the words from Galatians 6 and 9, which states, "Let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Asmani. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Leader for Opposition Business in this chamber,
Thank you,
Senator
Madam
Bannister.
President. Thank you. Madam President, I thank you very much, and I'd simply wish to begin by offering well wishes to my young friends at the Carlton Francis Primary School. I had an opportunity to speak at their graduation this year, and also my young friends at the General Cash Primary School. We have so many young people, Madam President, who are seeking to do the right things in our country, and who need the proper guidance to be able to move on to that stage of junior high school, which can be very turbulent and very difficult for them. I simply want to encourage them, take the opportunity to encourage them to continue to do their best, because this country will have great opportunities for these young people at some stage in the future. Madam President, please permit me also to offer my sincere condolences to the family of the late Elizabeth Doreen Porter, who died last week. I've known Doreen all of my life, and she died the way that she lived, peacefully at home in Steinert Creek, Andros. She had no enemies that I ever heard of. However, she had many, many admirers. And she spent 32 years in the classroom, imparting knowledge to hundreds of students and parents who can give thanks for the difference that she has made in their lives. I regret that my pre-scheduled travel abroad this weekend will prevent me from attending the funeral. However, I offer my sincere condolences to her children, Suzanne, Lucretia, Colombo, Allison, Christine, two of my favorite people, Hyacinth and Samantha. May she rest in peace. Madam President, Doreen lived a long, peaceful life and died peacefully. I wish that I could say the same generally for many of the young people in our country. And I listened very carefully to what the Minister of State for National Security said. And many of us here have the same concerns. However, Madam President, I do want to touch on something that he touched on, and I want to touch on it a little more generally than he did. But that is the fear of crime in our society. And as I do so, Madam President, I do want to wish the very, very best to the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Dr. Bernard Nordich. I wish him, I send him my prayers as he recovers from his recent illness. Madam President, ultimately the fear of crime in our country, and unfortunately, and I say it respectfully, at this stage, is at an unprecedented level. Bahamians are being violently accosted throughout the country. We all fear for our safety, and we fear for the safety of family members. The Minister touched on some of the initiatives that he plans to do to try to reduce that, but we all are concerned about that. But it is difficult for Bahamians to understand, Madam President, how the persons who are in position to ensure our safety all have bodyguards, in some cases multiple bodyguards, have been issued firearms, and they now have the means to protect themselves, while the rest of us are installing cameras, alarms in our homes, buying multiple locks to our doors, looking out of doors and windows behind burglar bars. Madam President, it is ironic that the people who put up posters at the last election, who said that they had the answers for the issues of crime, now feel the need to have firearms issued to them. And that only serves to undermine the confidence that ordinary, everyday Bahamians may have in their leaders. Increasingly,
But I do appreciate my learned friend. Madam President, I'm really, I would just ask my learned friend, and it is a point of order, because he is an honorable gentleman, and I believe that in his contribution so far, he's actually misleading. He's produced no evidence to support his contention that the fear of crime is at an unprecedented level. And respectfully, Madam President, he is suggesting that it is new or unique that if the Minister of National Security or the Prime Minister has a bodyguard or his people have been issued a weapon. We know that this has happened in the previous administration. The Minister of National Security had a weapon, was issued a weapon. That's nothing unusual. The Prime Minister had a bodyguard. So I would hope that he would not continue to suggest that this is something unusual. And we know that the murder rate was at record levels during the administration. More people are on bail for murder during that administration. So really, Madam President, in the face of the evidence, I do hope that he would cease and desist from misleading the Bahamian public, who, by the way, are quite aware of the facts.
Madam President, thank you. As I was speaking, Madam President, about the fact that many of us have to install cameras and alarms in our homes, buy multiple locks on our doors, and look out of our doors and windows behind burglar bars. Madam President, the Free National Movement did not post signs about the murder rate in our country during the last election. We didn't post any signs. We understood the importance in our country of being able to have Bahamians understand that this is one country that we all love as Bahamians, and it's important to do the best that we can for it. And we were fighting a battle against crime at that stage. Members opposite are now fighting a battle against crime. But we did not say that we had the answers that they did. They told Bahamians that they had the answers. Madam President, we are looking for them. Bahamians are looking for them, hopefully, to be able to provide those answers. Madam President, oh, I'm sorry. You can be getting up a lot. You can be getting up a lot today. Mr. Chairman, you look good in that chair. So, Mr. Chairman, increasingly, Bahamians, ordinary, everyday Bahamians, feel that such persons can't identify with them, can't relate to them. When I'm walking around with a firearm on my possession, and when I'm walking around with a bodyguard or 2 bodyguards, I don't live in the kind of fear that an ordinary Bahamian lives in. They can't relate to how we live every day. Mr. Chairman, that fear has been exacerbated by the recent realization that even top diplomats in our country cannot feel safe walking in town, on the way to church on a Sunday. And that is what we have now come to now.
Please, I'm sorry, Mr. I rise on a point of order. Would the honorable member, leader on the other side, please name the top diplomat who was accosted or felt in fear when they were walking in town going to church? Please name that person or withdraw your statement. Top diplomat. All I know is I saw something where the person who was not a top diplomat had made a very open statement about having no problem with the Bahamas, loving the Bahamas, going to church. I saw a smiling woman. Please name the top diplomat or withdraw it.
Mr. Chairman, I am obliged to you, sir. There's no rule that I have to name anybody here. There's none. I am making my contribution now, and the Bahamian people are watching and listening to what I have to say, and they know what happened in our country. They know what happened in the Bahamas. And so every time when the Honorable Attorney General stands up, objections such as that, the Bahamian people wonder, what are we trying to hide?
On a point of order, Mr. President, I'm not hiding anything. Mr. Chairman, this is a very serious matter when we sit in this upper chamber and debate matters. We are obliged to state facts. The honorable, and I underscore honorable leader on the other side, stated that a top diplomat, those were the words that he used. Now, he may not wish to state the name of the diplomat. But I find that I don't understand why, because we all know who the top diplomats are in this country. There is no top diplomat who was accosted here in this country. So please, don't mislead the public.
Mr. Chairman, I'm obliged to you, and I see that you're now in the middle of hearing objections, and I know that you will protect my right to speak in the Senate. I know that you will protect my right to speak. Mr. Chairman, a year ago, members of
I am sorry, I rose on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, and I asked you to protect the public here, to protect the public's right to facts. There was a statement that an untruthful statement, Mr. Chairman, and I call upon you to protect the public's right to have facts.
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest respect, sir.
Just, although you may not be at liberty to name, there's no rule at in the Senate to name. Perhaps withdrawing the phrase top diplomat
Mr. Chairman,
might be
with the greatest
appropriate.
respect, the United States Embassy closed for a day because a very senior, and this is the words that they use, a very senior diplomatic personnel, very senior one, was accosted on the streets, was assaulted on our streets in our town, in our city. This is not a matter for us to be playing with words. I am talking about something seriously that happened in our country that has never happened before. And you know, I was going to spend 1 minute on it, and now I'm spending 10 minutes on it, and the Bahamian people are getting to see exactly what is going on. They're getting to understand that I'm trying to make a point about something that concerns them, something that has been in the news every day, something that they are well aware of. And Mr. Chairman, all I'm trying to do is make the point, but I can't move. I can't move from the point.
I think we can accept the senior, the word senior.
Obliged, sir.
Senior.
So, Mr. Chairman, a year ago, you're going to be getting up a lot today. A year ago, members opposite proudly posted signs advertising the murder rate in the Bahamas. Now, they don't have to post the signs because under their watch, U.S. Embassy, the cruise ship industry, they're now issuing alerts on crime. And those alerts are not posted on signs. They are instantly transmitted around the world. That is impacting our tourism industry. That is what is hurting us. Those are the kinds of things. Those are the kinds of things that I am concerned about. Mr. Chairman, on Tribune on April 17th edition, under the headline, I know I was going to get Senator Bell back in here. The April 17th edition of the Tribune, the headline was "Cruise Ships Warn on Crime." And it read this, and I quote, sir, I'm quoting, and I adopt what they say, if that is required. Cruise ship officials are concerned, if I adopt it, I'm in good company. Let me finish the quote. Cruise ship officials are concerned that crime levels in New Providence, in particular downtown Nassau, are escalating at a pace no longer safe for passengers. Key word is escalating at a pace no longer safe for passengers. Tourism Minister Obi Wilscombe said yesterday. So, Mr. Chairman, it's not the FNM that's saying that crime is escalating. That's a direct quote from the Minister of Tourism. The FNM wants the best for the Bahamas. And that means standing up and requiring the government to live up to their promises. You see, Mr. Chairman, when we were in power, we did our part. For example, sir, let me give you an example. I'll give you a few examples. We passed legislation to permit witnesses to give evidence anonymously in court, so that the fear of retaliation by criminals would not dissuade them from giving evidence. This morning, I heard the Honorable Attorney General indicate that her office would be using that tool more frequently. It is a very useful tool, and I commend her in her attempts to use the full arsenal of crime-fighting tools at her disposal. Mr. Chairman, the FNM passed legislation to permit evidence to be given by video link. The Honorable Attorney General has also indicated that she will be utilizing this tool in her fight against crime. We completed the Magistrates Court complex that members opposite could not make headway with when the former Attorney General was quoted as saying certain things, and I won't say that here. We increased the number of judges that are permissible in the Supreme Court and in the Court of Appeal. And Mr. Chairman, I heard the Right Honorable Prime Minister last night indicate that he will now appoint up to 20 judges. And the Honorable Attorney General said it again this morning. As many as 10 criminal trials running at the same time. We wished him well. We wish the government well. The only problems that I'm concerned about when I ask the government is that the millions of dollars that are required for this initiative is not in the budget. I searched the budget. This is a budget debate. The Right Honorable Prime Minister closed the debate. The Honorable Attorney General started the debate in the Senate. They're talking about getting 10 courts, criminal courts operating at once. Before September, I understand. 20 judges appointed. It is not in this document. And we are discussing it in the budget debate. So where's the money going to come from? Are we going to have another supplemental appropriation before the midterm budget? Is that what we're doing? Do we have to find more millions and millions of dollars that could have, if the government was thinking about what they were saying, put in this, because it's part of the debate, so we could have had it in the estimates? Mr. Chairman, if the government planned to appoint 20 judges, they would have put it in this budget. It's not here. It sounds almost like ex post facto governance, saying something that comes to your mind and now you have to be able to live up to it. Saying something that comes to your mind that you don't have the time to put in here. Nothing in here about the facilities that will be required. The new courts, we're going to require new courts. If we have 10 criminal courts running at one time, we need to find those courts now because we're going to be running them in September. We have to find them. Qualified judges have to be appointed. Qualified judges. We have to have the staffing. As Senator Thompson is saying, the clerks, all the other people. Jury panels, a single jury panel has 48 people, as the Honorable Attorney General said this morning. So 10, that's 480 people, at least, going at the same time. We have to organize that. We're going to do all of that between now and September, and we don't even have it budgeted. We are going into the first week of July next week. We do not even have it budgeted. Mr. Chairman, I want the government to be able to do it. I want the government to be able to succeed with that. I would have liked if they had planned it and put it in this budget, so there was something that we could have seen it. But they say they're going to do it now, between now and September. We want to be able to see it. We want to see those courts working. We want to see them operational. And we want to see what's happening. We want to do the best. We want to cooperate and work with you. But we don't want just ex post facto ideas come up and thrown out. And nothing planned here, nothing in the estimates. The Bahamian people don't know what's going to cost them. This is the time when you tell the Bahamians, we're going to have 20 new courts, 20 courts operating. We're going to have 10 criminal judges. It's going to cost you this amount of money. It's not here. Mr. Chairman, the Bahamian people deserve an answer. They deserve to know. They should know. But they don't. It's not here. You know, I've been here for a little over a year, and my time here is getting shorter and shorter. But I did ask a number of questions in the last budget and throughout the year. Not one has been answered yet, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me go back to what the FNM did. The Free National Movement passed legislation to permit electronic monitoring of suspects on bail. The government has said that there's some problems with some of the contractors and other things we've done. And that is why they're the government now to fix it and improve on what we've done. But we passed the enabling legislation. We amended the Criminal Justice International Cooperation Act. We did it. We passed in 2009 a truly comprehensive police act. And the government has come and amended it in one provision, and they seek to amend it in another provision, but they haven't replaced the act. They must be satisfied with the Police Act. We amended the law to permit plea discussions and plea agreements, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we amended the Anti-Terrorism Act to permit other countries to obtain freezing orders without the need for reciprocity. These are the kinds of things we did. We amended the Penal Code. We amended the Criminal Procedure Code Act. And we created new offenses under those, such as an accessory after the fact, so that when somebody commits a crime and you help them or you hide them. As Senator Bell says, you have people actively cloaking and hiding crime. Accessory after the fact was not a criminal offense in the Bahamas. It is now. We created those offenses. We created new sexual offenses to protect our women and our children. Those were things we worked hard, debated on. We amended the Firearms Act and the Dangerous Drugs Act to impose stiffer penalties and create new offenses, such as protecting children in school zones. Who objects to that? Mr. Chairman, members opposite have to appreciate the significant inroads that the FNM made in legislating against crime. Because in 1 year in office, and I heard the Honorable Attorney General talking about the legislation that they passed. In 1 year in office, they have not passed a single piece of legislation aimed at curtailing criminal activity. Not one. So they have to be satisfied with what we did. They have to be satisfied that we put the legislative regime in place. There are no amendments to the Sexual Offences Act, no amendments to the Penal Code, no amendments to the Criminal Procedure Code, no amendments to the Firearms Act, no amendments to the Dangerous Drugs Act that relate to penalties and offenses. Juries Act, none of them. They have to be satisfied with what we did. We created the legislative regime. We created that. We created the provisions so that witnesses can be anonymous. We created the atmosphere for the fight against crime. And now, it's time for members opposite to utilize that legislation so that we can do something about the pervasive fear of crime in the Bahamas. After all, Mr. Vice President, armed robberies are still up in the first 5 months of this year. From 379, I understand, to over 500. I thought that's what the minister said last night. Didn't the Minister of National Security say that last night? Anyway, I will look at it. I stand to be corrected, but I also had the contribution of the Minister of National Security. 6 incidents of what? Five hundred. So now, so now the figures that are on the police website are going to have to be changed. They're going to have to be changed because the figures here are different from the figures that the police have on their website. Even for 2012, you have, Mr. Chairman, I am being provided with figures for 2012, which are different from the figures on the police website. That's what I'm saying. No, I'm looking at everything. I had good teachers. The figures now, today, on the police website are different from this. Oh, this is my copy now. Thank you, Senator Bell. All right. I'd like a copy. I'd like a copy. But you could look at the police website today, and the figures are different. So, Mr. Vice President, we can't even decide right now what are the figures of armed robberies. What are the correct figures? Mr. Chairman, after their first year in office, the government has failed to achieve these objectives, despite having a minister and a Minister of State for National Security. I was, however, heartened, Mr. Chairman, I was heartened to hear the Minister of State for National Security speak of the need to improve conditions at Her Majesty's prison. We support him in that desire. I had to visit clients who were remanded at Her Majesty's prison. They were not convicted, they were just remanded, just like anyone can be. And the conditions that they were living in were terrible.